Good morning, all of my physically and socially distanced friends. It is day I have no idea of the quarantine, and I'm going to try 2 recipes that I have not made before. So we're going to make asparagus souffle and blueberry muffins, but the blueberry muffins are actually going to use the mini wheat, shredded mini wheat, and so we'll see how this works. I'm going to actually show you something too that'll help you when you're cooking with the kids. Mise en place means stuff in place pretty much, or put your things in place. And what I usually do before I do these videos is try to get everything organized so that I can just kind of throw stuff in and cook for you. And that's the greatest way to do stuff with kids, is help them get you organized first and then do the project with them. And I think I'm going to try to do that for Aiden's birthday party coming up. I think I'm going to do like a Zoom video and some egg dyeing and things. So that'll be pretty cool. So hopefully everybody is faring well. Make sure that you go to my YouTube page, Barefoot Pampered Chef, and become a fan and share that YouTube page so that everyone can have some cooking demonstrations. While we're all stuck at home, we might as well increase our culinary skills and see what we've got from there. So, asparagus. When you use asparagus, usually you just use the tip portion. And everyone seems to either compost or throw out or not know what to do with the ends. So what we're going to do is I have about 8 ounces of the ends. So those tough, fibrous ends. And what I've done is I've steamed them for about 15 to 20 minutes until they're pretty mushy. I mean, they're like falling apart. And what we're going to do is we're going to take all of these ends and we're going to put them in my food processor. So pardon me for a minute because it's going to be a little bit loud. But we're going to put all of these ends that have been steamed to the point of mushiness and then cooled down. And we're going to put them in the food processor. So we're going to kind of make an asparagus paste. I would suggest a food processor for this. If you have a blender that can do foods like this, that's great. Use a blender. I have one of those little magic bullets. You probably need to do these in batches if you have the little magic bullet. I don't know if you'd get it good enough if you just have a hand blender. Let's see if this is good enough. Might have to play with it a little bit. I've still got some pretty big pieces in here. It seems to want to go up the sides, which is fine. But it's getting there. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of moisture to this, because then I think it will blend a little bit better. So I'm going to put that in there. There we go. A little bit of moisture is making it blend a little bit better. You let that blend for a second. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to strain that out. So I'm just going to grab my strainer and some paper towels, since I added that extra moisture. good now. Okay. So let me show you how this looks. So, I mean, we've blended it up into quite a paste there. So I'm going to put this and scoop it into my paper towels so I can get it nice and dry. And like I said, I mean, I've got about 8 ounces, so that's about the ends of 2 bunches of asparagus. So those things that you would normally throw out, steamed for a good 15 to 20 minutes until they're mushy, and then pop them in the food processor. So that should be good there. So now all I'm going to do with this is kind of squeeze it to get that moisture out of there. Should probably do that over my sink. And as you can see, I mean, I'm getting quite a bit of moisture. All right. That should be good now. Pop that in there. So I'm going to add this to a bowl that has about 2 ounces of Parmesan cheese in it. You're not going to get all the liquid out of there, but get a good amount out. All right. Now the next step is what makes this a souffle. So first we're going to add some salt and pepper to taste. So I'm going to add some pink Himalayan sea salt. It's got some good minerals in there. I'm going to add a little bit of everything but the bagel seasoning because I kind of want these to taste almost bagelish. So about half of a teaspoon of that, and some good fresh cracked black pepper. I like cracked black pepper. And pepper is really good for you. Now to this, we're going to add 2 egg yolks. So if you haven't separated eggs before, the best bet is to have your 2 bowls. Crack the egg, hold the crack side up, and we're going to put the white in one bowl. So you want to kind of rock the yolk into one side of the egg and slowly take the yolk back and forth between the eggshells. So the egg white goes in one bowl, the egg yolk goes into the other bowl. We're going to do this with 2 eggs, so I'll show you again. Crack the egg, hold the crack side up, so you're making 2 egg cups pretty much. See how the white falls out? And then when I scoop, I'm just passing that yolk back and forth, and we're going to have the white fall off of the yolk. And we're going to put the yolk into the bowl that has the our asparagus in it. So I'm going to mix up the asparagus, spices, egg yolks, and our cheese. So about 2 ounces of Parmesan cheese. The cheese is optional. You don't have to do that. I think cheese and asparagus goes great, so I'm going to do that. I'm just going to give this a quick mix so it's all combined. So it's all nice and combined in there. Okay, now for the souffle part. We're going to take these egg whites and we're going to whip them until they have some good peaks on them. So I'm just using a hand mixer. And you can see they're already getting frothy. This is what makes your souffle light and fluffy. So if you look when I turn this off, my peaks stay peaked. Hopefully you guys can see that. So when I pick this up, the peaks actually stay up. they're not flopping over. So I'm gonna put that into my prep sink and I'm done with this. Now, we're not just gonna mix this in, we're going to fold it in. So I'm gonna take about a spoonful at a time and very gently fold this in, which fold means to kind of scrape the bowl and fold your mixture over top of it. So we're being very gentle with these egg whites because we don't want them to lose their peak. If you just sit there and you mix it all together roughly, you're not going to get that smoothness, and the texture of your soufflés is going to be dense. So usually for this recipe, you would use ramekins. So I don't have ramekins. You would grease them really well. So what I did is I'm using my mini bundt pan, which has pretty thick walls on it, and I can grease it that way. Again, if you guys like my recipes, go to my YouTube page, Barefoot Pampered Chef. I have a lot of videos on there that are from before the quarantine. There's a lot with my son Aiden and I. Make sure you become fans, like it, share it as much as you possibly can. Okay, so this is what that looks like, and we're gonna put it into our ramekins here. You don't want to overfill it. And then we're gonna put this in the oven at 350 degrees, and we're gonna cook it for about 25 to 30 minutes. So let me get these in here. These are pretty big, so I think I'm going to be able to make about maybe 3 of them here. You could probably do this in a nice sturdy muffin tin if you wanted to. Actually, I think I can make 4. All right, and then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make some blueberry muffins using our shredded mini wheats that we may have left over. So I'm going to put this bowl in my prep sink. I'm actually going to use this mixer for this next recipe. I'm going to put these in my 350 degree oven and set my timer for about 25 minutes. And we'll see how those turn out. All right. So, like I said, when you're cooking with kids, the thing that you want to do is make sure that you have everything in place so it's easy for them and you're not setting them up for failure. If you are a person who really wants to keep a clean kitchen but you still want to cook with your kids, then you need to have a mise en place or stuff in place so that they're more organized. So what I do is I take all of my ingredients and I separate them out into bowls and I put them on a serving tray or a half sheet pan, and then I have them all organized and ready to go. So what we're gonna do, actually here, yeah, I'm just gonna kind of show you guys all the stuff that I have in place because I'm gonna be grabbing these as I go, but I have everything that I need to make this recipe on my half sheet pan, all set and ready. So I'm gonna take my bowl, I'm gonna make sure I have my muffin tin already lined, and we're gonna start. So the very first thing that we're gonna add is our dry ingredients. So for this recipe, our dry ingredients are 1.5 cups of flour. Now make sure when you're measuring your flour that you don't dig your cup into the flour. You wanna take a spoon it into your cup measure, and then at the top you wanna level it off. You don't wanna pack flour, you want to pack brown sugar. So 1.5 cups of flour, You can use wheat for this recipe. I have a mixture. And then in this same bowl, I have 2 tablespoons of baking powder, a pinch of salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and I'm going to add that to my bowl. Now the next thing that I'm going to add is my sugar. I have a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. And I have 1 cup of my shredded mini wheats. These are actually just the mini wheat cubes that I put in the processor and made 1 cup out of. So as you can see, it's all nice and finely chopped up there. So we're going to add that to our dry ingredients and give it a little bit of a mix. Now before I add my wet ingredients, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a tip. If you add in your fruit to the dry mixture, it's going to evenly distribute throughout the cupcake or the muffin, as opposed to all sinking to the bottom, because you get the flour coating on it, and that flour coating is going to help hold it up in the muffins. So I've got about 1/2 cup of blueberries here. I'm using frozen. You can use fresh if you want to. So 1/2 cup of blueberries. And I'm going to mix those in so that they get all nice and coated with flour. So now our blueberries are coated with the flour mixture so they won't sink to the bottom of our muffins. Now for our wet ingredients. This calls for 1/3 cup of oil. If you don't feel like using oil in a recipe, you can substitute the oil for applesauce. I'm using the vegetable oil today. We're going to use, it's stuck here. Okay, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. So these are kind of going to be lemon blueberry. And then we're going to use 3/4 cup of milk. And I actually put some blueberries in my milk while it was sitting there, just to infuse my milk with the blueberry flavor, and 1 egg. Bloop. Usually, if you have eggs from the store, I would suggest cracking them into another bowl and then adding them, just to make sure that they're nice and fresh. I get fresh eggs, so I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to mix this mixture together. I don't want to overmix it. If you overmix batters, the batter tends to make the product dense. So I just want to make sure that this is nice and combined. So I'm just scraping down my sides and just making sure that I have everything in there, which I do. And then what I'm going to do for these is to make sure that I have the correct amount in each one. I'm going to grab my handy dandy scoop. You can grab an ice cream scoop. The kids love doing this because they can measure things out. And so I'm going to take 1 scoop and see how much that fills, which is pretty good because we want each of these filled to about 2/3 capacity because they are going to rise a little bit. So I might be able to put a little bit more into each of these. Now, when I've got all of these filled, I've got my oven set to 400 degrees, and we're going to cook these for about 16 to 20 minutes or until they're kind of nice and brown on top. This may actually make a little bit more than 12 muffins, which is fine. You could actually coat the inside of your muffin cups as well if you want them to come out a little bit easier. The paper muffin cups, you don't have to use paper muffin cups if you don't want to. For some reason, mine have a tendency to stick if I don't use them. And so I'm going to pop these in the oven. And we're going to put those on for 16 minutes so I can check them before they get too done. So, 2 recipes that we did. Let's rehash and go over them. We did an asparagus souffle. So we took 8 ounces or 2 bunches of the ends of the asparagus, the woody stemmy ends that you usually throw away, steamed the crud out of them. So 15-20 minutes, as long as it takes to get them nice and mushy. We blended those in the food processor, and we added that to 2 egg yolks, some salt, pepper, and whatever seasoning you want. I used everything but the bagel, and some 2 ounces of Parmesan cheese. To that, we added 2 egg whites that we had whipped into stiff peaks, and we folded that in gently. And then we popped that in some greased ramekins or greased cupcake tins, and we're going to cook that at 350 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes. Our next recipe is blueberry muffins. So for the blueberry muffins, we used our dry ingredients, 1.5 cups of flour, 1/2 cup of sugar, 1 cup of shredded wheat that we ground down into a fine shred, 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and then we added to that our wet ingredients, 1/3 cup of vegetable oil, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, 1 egg, and 3/4 cup of milk. And remember, we added our 1/2 cup of blueberries to the dry ingredients before we added the wet, so that the blueberries don't sink to the bottom of our muffins. So hopefully you guys learned something today. I will be back later tonight. I'm going to make for my family a meatloaf using some of our shredded wheat and some zucchini fritters as well. So hopefully you guys can join me for that, and everyone will make it through this, I promise. We just need to stay apart from each other for a while, listen to the governor, wine with DeWine if you need to at 2 p.m., and we'll go from there. Thank you, guys.